And Brandon, I think you have the wrong mic on.
And we're trying to not have unbelievable amounts of background noise, but Brandon Valley decided that we wanted to hear everything that's happening in this house. And that's what we're doing today, everyone. I am Brad Chester, and next to me is a random fucktard named Brandon Valley. Below me is, this one dude, I don't know, B. Ryan is, I think, his street name. So
yeah. Yeah, me with all my street cred.
That's the, you know what? When I think Horton, I think street cred. Everyone, how's it going?
The other day I was driving into work and I put Pandora on random. And I roll into work with my music cranked and my window slightly cracked next to one of my coworkers listening to Gin and Juice. So it was good times.
Laid back with my mind on my money and my money on my mind.
So needless to say, my two coworkers that were in the parking lot just looked and went, "Is that the old white guy that's normally listening to like hillbilly music?"
I hope that you guys are done with your home remodeling, because I'm just assuming that's what she was doing, because that's the only thing that could have been that loud.
Just Eloise's parents are coming in all the way from France tomorrow, so we are remodeling.
So she's using a jackhammer.
Yes. Are you using a jackhammer? A jackhammer?
Jackhammer.
Dogs crunching their bones.
It's the dogs. They're enjoying themselves.
It's just like a good boner.
It was definitely not the dog. Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. There was just so much noise. She's like, it was the dogs. The dog's combined weight is 50 pounds. So,
whoa. My dog is taller than you, so he's at least 60.
And your point? I was just going to say, what's your point? My dog's taller than you. And, like, also, water is wet, everyone. We're just giving updates here. So, I want to talk about something that I didn't know that apparently everyone else did, but I didn't, and Brandon had to let me in on this, which is 40K's on South Park right now.
100%.
When did this happen? How did no one else tell me? You guys all failed terribly.
It started the season. So there was a teaser of just a Raven Guard logo, like on episode 1. And then they showed them like a rule book on like episode 2. And then they were painting models. And now they're just full playing a game in this last episode.
I mean, if Randy Marsh says I need to play 40K, I need to play 40K. That's all I'm saying.
I want to play 40K with Randy Marsh. They look like they're having an amazing time.
Brought in adult entertainers to lure the kid away from playing 40K. So
this sounds fantastic. This is parenting at its finest, everyone. Man,
isn't this how 40K is played? Like, I'm pretty sure this happened at Adepticon.
Sounds fantastic. This is America. This is America.
America.
It's America. I didn't hear no bell.
I hear no bell. This is America. So I need to watch this episode, and I'm very excited about this. I'm excited when our nerddom goes into mainstream.
I mean, last season, nerddom did go pretty hard into South Park because they had a board game league or board game club at a school, and like the girls took it over, and the guys freaked out. It was quite entertaining. And
is that when they were power gaming?
Yeah.
Oh, that was the Heather Swanson show also. Oh, God, that was a great episode. Where they were just like, the boys are trying to play for fun, and the girls are like math hammering the shit out of it and just destroying them. Oh, so nice.
And it was like, wait a minute, you read the rule book?
Who does that?
Are like, well, yeah. And we figured out if you do this and that, and you put this combination together with that combination, you create an infinite engine that does this. And the guys are just like,
They're technically correct. The best kind of correct.
Yeah.
Tell her she's no longer allowed to use the jackhammer, by the way. I cannot stand any more banging. Is she celebrating like Chinese New Year? What are we banging pans? What's happening?
That was back in February. We're having a party in here. Just turn my mic down. I'm sure you can do that.
I can't. You're thinking that I can work this stuff? Make it work on your side. That's crazy talk.
Or I can just mute him for a second.
Eh,
Or now I can't unmute him.
I did not know this. So, all right. So, Karis from the South Park area, he goes, the South Park has brought the Casa Bonita restaurant in Denver, put millions into it. They are heroes around here. You have to Google the restaurant, indoor cliff divers. Holy fuck, how have I not been here?
It's opening in May.
Oh, I need this in my life. I thought that there was just bad decisions being made at Senior Frogs when I went there 1,000 years ago in my youth, when they had a water slide that went out to the Gulf in the middle of the restaurant. I was just like, this seems like a bad decision, and I'm horribly drunk. Like, but let's do this. Like, it had the worst food ever. I mean, if you're going to that place, do you really think that there's going to be good food, Kevin? Come on now. Like, it's an experience, and if it didn't make you sick when you ate it, I feel it was a win.
So isn't it like a restaurant that was opened up in the early 90s, like Chuck E. Cheese's and Discovery Zone, but for adults? And then they just closed because of COVID. And then I think they just bought it. And it's going to reopen in May. Hopefully with a better menu.
That was the one for the episode where fucking Cartman locks him away and tells him that there's a nuclear bomb or whatever the hell happened.
Oh, zombies.
It's like, I got to do all my stuff before they get me. All right, we should, should we actually tackle the thing that's the big headline? Or should we just keep talking South Park? I don't know. I'm 50-50 on this right now.
South Park is pretty good, but why don't we tackle the big headline?
We can talk about both things. There's a potential to go on to what we're doing, and we can talk about both Warhammer and South Park at the same time.
I feel like, sadly, I would definitely have to be Kenny if we were doing this.
Yes.
Oh my god, they killed Brad. Again.
Sounds like a normal Wednesday.
Yeah, I was like, sucky.
Killed Brad, we lost Brad. Brad wandered off into the forest. We have no
whatever. Tuesday. It's all
Brad
good.
Mysterion Chester, you got this.
Oh, yes. I am definitely Mysterion. Now, the thing is I want to have... I'm going to cycle through some of your picks too, by the way. So I'll be these are pictures in the right-hand corner of a bunch of models that Mr. Valley over here has been working on and has worked on. And I think they're pretty sweet. He's got some good shit, actually. I haven't given you enough credit over the years. You actually have some nice-looking shit. I mean, I'm not going to stop being a dick to you, but I will acknowledge that you all also have nice shit.
If you weren't being a dick, I'd be really concerned.
I mean, true story. I have to admit that also. So, also apparently Google Chrome, which never actually listens to any of your conversations, just told me that Warhammer Competitive, How Do Blood Angels Beat Leagues of Votan just became my immediate thing to look at.
They auto win. They got this.
Thanks, guys. But let's talk a little bit about... I obviously am not going to do it. What do you guys do when we have an edition change pending, as far as how do you get ready for it? How do you model for it when you don't know? And I'm talking like, we're just assuming that, leaks are wrong, because most of the time they are. How do you get ready? So we've got an edition change in 3 months. And what are you doing? Well, actually less now, like 2.5, I guess. But what do you do right now in your modeling to get ready for that? Because you don't know exactly what's going to be good. Do you still pick a faction? Do you try to expand the rest of it? Because like for me, I just tried to buy whatever was shitty in the last edition, because they usually, kind of ride the cyclical on that. So I just go, hey, can I eBay buy a lot of stuff that had trash rules in 8th and 9th? And usually what happens is they're good again. You know what I mean? What is your guys' take on that?
Well, I guess let's take one step back. So we were chatting before the stream started. Brad, you've been playing since what, 2nd edition, when the dinosaurs were around?
Yes, Jesus and I played a lot of games. He always moved a little bit extra, though, so I don't like to talk about those games.
He walked on water. He just ignores the difficult terrain tests.
Walked on water, 6-inch models, 6-inch moves were always 7-inch. That's bullshit.
On the 7th day. How about you, Brian? Sixth or second edition as well?
Second edition as well, yeah.
So would it be safe to assume that the state of 40K is rather cyclical? Like if you would have bought a box of Striking Scorpions back in second edition, they would still be overpowered right now. You would have got the best return on investment.
Well,
I mean, yes.
but they were also terrible. So at some point in time, so.
But it's cyclical. They go through
Yeah,
phases
I
where they're
agree.
really good, and then they're terrible.
But
And then they're really good again, and they're terrible.
Well, a lot of people have different takes on that. That's why I asked the question, because like I talk to different people and they have wildly different views on it of what they do to prepare.
My prep is, if you have one faction you specialize in, just keep focusing on that. Buy the units you don't have, paint them up, have them ready to go. Tyranids for me, right? I have pretty much 3 of everything, 3 units of pretty much everything, with the exception of like gaunts and troop choices where I have an obscene amount. So I'm normally always ready with that one faction for an edition change. So no matter what happens, I can pull it off the shelf and go. Just so happens this is the one time where the edition change is going to happen, where I'm going to get a whole bunch of new models for my Tyranids, hence the picture behind me reminding me that I'm going to be more broke sooner than later. But Marines never, ever go out of vogue. When a new edition comes out, Marines normally are good in some form or another. They're somehow playable because it's Games Workshop's heaviest selling line. Just focus on that army. If it's your, if it's one of, almost everyone has some sort of Marine army on their shelf. Stuff's not going to stop, the traditional standard stuff isn't going to stop being good completely. Terminators are going to be decent because they're getting new models. You got to assume that they're going to make the standard Primera stuff pretty good. Just focus on what you enjoy in the game and work on building those. If you've started a new army, you know that what the good units are now are probably going to continue to be decent at least. And if there's an army now that's complete hot trash, pick one up, paint it up, have it ready, because it'll probably be better in the new edition. I agree with Brad on that one of have one of those, one of those units in queue ready to go.
So here's an interesting conversation. So we were talking about this at Adepticon. How many armies do you feel like you need to own in order for one of them to be good in this cyclical nature?
3.
Yeah, I would have to say that too. If you're actually looking to not, if you want to have something that you've had for a while and you're basically been working on, and you're not going to be the bandwagon driver like Brad here is, you have to have a trifecta. I agree on that, because one
and you have to have one from everything. You have to have a Chaos army, you have to have a Xenos army, and you have to have an Imperium army.
Yeah, one of those will be good. It's just sometimes Chaos is really good, sometimes Imperium is really good, and sometimes Xenos is really good. And there's never a time when you're not probably going to have at least a top tier army from one of those that you can make, as long as you have a good unit selection from those factions. And those are wide factions, though. If you just say Xenos, Chaos, Imperium, that's still shooting with a shotgun at that point in time. You know what I mean? So
I'm a big fan of everyone's going to have a main faction, right? I've got Tyranids as my main faction. My secondary faction is Ultramarines or Necrons based on volume. They're both about the same amount. Obscene tons of them. And then I've got a whole bunch of subsidiary factions that I have small amounts painted up. I've probably an exception to a rule on a lot of this, but I have, a reasonably large Tau army that's painted up. I've got GSC that's mostly painted up. But to pivot to something else, I'm always got something little in the queue, so I could always turn on to that. And the one thing I can say is right now, if you want to start something new, grab a combat patrol box, paint it up. I have a feeling that the best way to learn the new edition, because they've come out with they've already told everybody they're doing it. They're doing the combat patrol. Pardon me.
Those boxes are good too, dude. I have to say that they've done a good job on that. The last couple combat patrol, they're just the box sets themselves have been actually very quality as far as, and I'm not talking just quality of models, but like quality of what you get, because there's been tons of years where you got a box of just trash. They basically swept the floor and put all the trash models in, and when here's a box, you should buy it. And you're like, what am I going to use out of this? You're like, no, so I think that the Combat Patrol boxes have been pretty good for if you're looking to base a new army or at least supplement your army.
Even those the boarding patrol boxes with all the new characters that are coming out. That Farsight box looks like a steal, and it's relatively inexpensive.
Sorry,
So
I just
it is a steal. The problem is every friendly local game store got to order this
many.
thing.
I didn't get one.
And they were very limited. All that stuff will be available again somewhere, or down the line GW will go, oh yeah, we were printing those. But as we know, they've shifted their production to making all the new models, so therefore they're kind of, shorting a little bit of releases here for a bit. My big thing is the reason I say pick up the new Combat Patrol boxes is because the way they've said they're doing things with, you can pick up a Combat Patrol, play a Combat Patrol box versus somebody else in a small game who's running a Combat Patrol. It's a good simple way to learn the new rules without just going balls to the wall on day one of 2,000 points. Here we go. Let's roll. You can go Combat Patrol. All right, let's get the base down to the new rules. Let's get the base down to some of our units and then move on. That's one of my big things. Everyone asks, how do I prepare? I play a couple small games before I go balls to the wall.
I can see that.
So anytime there's an edition change, the people with the deepest, widest collections are going to be hurt less than people who just have exactly 2,000 points.
Oh, 1,000%. Because you can't pivot over. You need more. Even if you're one faction person, you need a good 3,000-4,000 points, because a lot of times your big unit's going to
pick that up.
Well, I'm just saying that you need at least that though, because like Terminators are slamming right now. I know they're coming out, so they'll probably still be good, but like we'll just use that as a big point sink, you know what I mean? Where you painted up 10, 20 Terminators, especially playing like Deathwing or something, and then we get a new edition and they suck, you know what I mean? Which they did. And remember when we went to 8th, Terminators were holy shit bad. Like, yeah, I would have let you just take a free unit of Terminators and it really wouldn't have impacted my game at that point in time. But the thing is that you got to have enough stuff. And that's the problem, that you need the loot on that, or you need that 3D printer go burr. So it's a big thing to get your stuff out. What are your guys' thoughts on that especially when we're getting into a new edition? What are your thoughts on 3D printed models? Obviously GW is not huge on them, but like what do you think about that? Because it's hard to keep up. And like, for instance, we played World Eaters, dude, at the team tournament at Adepticon, props Adepticon. And for Jackals were, $50 for a box of 10, we played a lot of them. So like, man, just keeping up with that's just like, holy shit. You know what I mean?
Warhammer is definitely a luxury hobby. But the thing is, number one, find a good retailer who gives you a percentage off, that has a rewards program that treats you well, and then it makes you having to chase down kits a little easier. 3D printed, as an old school guy, I'm kind of hey, let's play with the models that were designed for the game. But I also get that it's a luxury hobby, and if you just want to play and try some new stuff out, 3D printing is a way to do it. It's tough because it used to be that we were always scouring for bits, right? Because you never got enough bits in the box. Mm-hmm. Now with GW's way of designing armies, the bits that come in the box are what you can play in the army. So there's less bits needing. Now it's more model need. We got to see where they go with points to see where things land, because if a Combat Patrol is officially going to be about a 500-point game, that's not too bad. That means armies are going to get a little bit cheaper.
I'm going to go to 2 questions here. Corey, money is a problem for a lot of people. Say, for instance, you're doing sexual acts in the parking lot to make your hobby needs happen. It's definitely an issue. But I want to go to Star-Lord. Do you guys think intercessors should get a buff since they are literally in every box? Maybe, but I think that they basically pointed them their utility became trash when all the Phobos units went super down in price and they got free war gear. Like it's laughably, like if you'd go, would you rather take a unit of infiltrators or a unit of intercessors? 4 deploy, 12 box, and ignore the first wound. Yeah, that's a joke comparatively.
For 10 points.
Yeah, it's just sorry. If they make them significantly better. 4 deploy is so strong, and that 12-inch box out is so strong. Obviously, they may not have any of those, but I'm assuming they're going to be 4 deploys though, because they're an infiltration. I mean, it's literally the name, infiltrators. You know what I mean? But like 4 deploys, such a strong mechanic that it's hard not to. And not even just a box out and everything else. It's the fact that you can go to the neutral, objective. You can start in the best place. There's just not enough places to hide your whole army most of the time in terrain layouts. Having stuff that's either off board or out of your deployment zone, not just aggressive, but just out of your deployment zone, is super huge. So unless they make intercessors like significantly better, like actually hit hard, either up their volume, make them hit, or just their combat, just anything, to be honest with you. They're slow and they don't hit hard. You're like, I just don't need them in my life. If
you listen to what Stu has said, what Mike Brandt said in one of his conversations that I heard, their goal was to make every unit for every army playable in the right circumstance. That doesn't mean that every army is going to have, Highlander style where there's one of everything because everything's so good that you need a little bit of everything. But the goal was to go, if you want to play Firstborn Marines, we've made them viable so you can play an army of Firstborn Marines. If you want to play all Intercessors and, Primaris Marines, we've made it so that army is also viable.
I'd love to see that.
That's the case, and I'm pessimistically optimistic that they've knocked it out of the park this time. But they've said that before and missed on multiple occasions.
Yeah, the thing is that I hope they are, because the thing is I miss Firstborn because of the fact that if you look at the kit for a Firstborn, just a tactical squad, you have the option to take like a zillion different things. But that's the whole thing. In the fluff, the Marines, old Bobby G wrote the codex so that they're adapting to whatever the site is. You know what I mean? Wherever they go, they have the right weaponry and everything else. If you take Primaris Marines, you literally get t-shirt and a stick, go. You know what I mean? The regular tac squad literally can take any heavy weapon, any special weapon, then the sergeant can take some shit. And I love the ability to mix and match with those guys. They just need to make them slightly better.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that I hope for the new edition is that the number one, they update the ranges that need the updating. Eldar clearly need updating. If you have a Warp Spider from 1993, it's still the same model.
You mean the Sand People? Yeah. That's the dumbest pose ever. Literally, super fast ninja warriors. What's their pose?
This is what, the 7th Terminator pose? 8th? 7th or 8th Terminator pose that they've done, the 7th time they've gotten redone. And Warp Spiders have never seen a redo. So my hope is that they go, oh yeah, we need to update those things. I hope that happens, and I hope they finish flushing out a couple of the armies that are still missing units. Votan will probably get a little bit more flush out like Sisters did when they got their refresh from 8th to 9th.
Which was really cool, though. They gave us some cool stuff. You know what I really, really want? I'm just singing Spice Girls now, apparently. That's cool. Don't mind me. I'd definitely be Old Spice. But I also have to go to the wall because I got distracted because all I see is deck the squads are viable when you're playing a homeless midget in the back of a boat on a rainy Wednesday. That's so specific.
Don't judge his Wednesday. Sounds like a great time.
But I really want the Marines to go back to not having one main book and to be unique for the chapters. It used to be that each chapter had something that they did good, and then they just didn't have access to certain shit. So they were different, which when you play, now you're always just playing the best of the Marines, and it just matters whether or not you put, whatever their doctrine is on it. You know what I mean? That's about it. Everybody gets everything. So I just, used to have each Marine chapter doing a specific thing. Eldar stuff did that too. You got to remember that the craft worlds were known for specific things. Super fast bikes, a ton of casters, a ton of wraith constructs and stuff. Now it's just none of that shit matters. It's just because it's all been kind of homogenized.
I don't think they're going to do that. I think it's going to go.
Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Oh, I mean, that was back in 3rd and 4th edition where there was all this character with each army. And I think they're moving away from that. Like, if we look at the Guard book, if we look at the World Eaters book, a lot of the unit entries are getting very simplified, and you're going to remove even more character. Like, when I think White Scars, what do I think White Scars? No Dreadnoughts, no Terminators, everything's on a bike. I don't think that's going to happen anymore because they want to sell kits.
So I think one of the things you're going to see, at least from what they've talked about, and they've talked about a very little, but they've talked about the Gladiator Strike Force, which is a tank, sounds like, at least from the way they've written everything, a tank company for Marines. And they specifically have said, like, hey, this will probably fit certain armies much better and certain styles much better. It may not affect the Ultramarines who are better at this. And it was just like, okay, there's going to be, in that your page of detachment abilities for your army, there's going to be some detachments that work really good for X, some that really work good for Y. We just have to, again, it's a wait and see game right now. They were going to keep spoiling for the next 3 months tons of stuff until we get to probably the first week in June where everything is, I shouldn't say everything is out there, but where most things are out there, and we'll have a good feel for a lot of stuff.
I hope they put out the rules fairly early, to be honest, because everything's supposed to be online. But we've got a lot of tournaments that have stated they're going to be using 10th. I'd like to have like more than a week to figure out an edition's rules. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because we've got ATC, we've got when are you at? When Salt Lake? Oh, Salt City is
Salt City's July 7th through 9th.
Yeah, same thing. You know what I mean? Where you're like, hey, I'm running 10th, but holy shit.
What they've done with every other edition, they sent out the first day pre-orders were live. Every store had a copy of the Indominus box. So the rules, at least the base rules, were there. Right? You didn't have all the indexes in 8th. We'll use that for the example there, but you had the main box set there. So I think, in Indominus, it was the same way. You had the Indominus 2 weeks before. So the main rulebook was there. I assume the main rulebook will be the day pre-orders go live. Every content creator will have it. So all those will be out there. And then everything else will probably come the week after.
Yes, but like for regular people, like everybody that just wants to put in a list for ATC, for Salt City and stuff like that, man, you got to learn on the fucking fly because you still got to put your list in, a week before.
Like as I've said, Salt City is going to be 10th edition. I have no qualms or doubts about it. Lists will probably be due the Wednesday before because I have to give everybody that time to at least, make sure they can hobby and get everything done, make sure they're ready. I've gotten a couple reps in. So I'll probably give a very short window for list due.
I'm actually surprised they don't leak more stuff so people can get started playing and getting used to it as we get closer, you know what I mean? As opposed to, here is the rules. Like, they have starter box rules in the combat patrols and shit like that. I don't know why they just don't put those online and go, hey, here's here's our starter rules, you know what I mean? Start by using this shit. And then you can get used to some of the changes, you know what I mean? Whether it's consolidation, pile-ins, whatever the new mechanics are, you can start using those in at least test games.
Yeah, the problem is the rules right now are not written with the edition in mind, right? That's why all the codexes are going to be null and void. You would have to have the whole enchilada to be able to fully play test it, to fully know what you're going to do, have your idea for your army, because every data sheet changes. No psychic phase. All your rules for your psyker and what spells they can cast on your data sheet. So that just takes...
I've been saying that for a while, man. I hope that is the case. I think that's going to be the case Yeah. It's just, AOS has been doing that for a while, and it makes things... And I like complexity in the game, don't get me wrong. For me, I spend a lot of time doing 40k stuff, so complexity to me isn't as big of a deal because that's what I do all day. You know what I mean? So I know all the new rules. So I don't really care that we're getting that overwhelming amount of random shit from all the books because I get to see it anyways. But man, I've said this a million times, but I really hope if we're going to use things like stratagems and powers and stuff like that, anything that your guy can do, your unit, your HQ, your whatever, should just be on your card. Period. You should just have your.
They said there's going to be 6 strats for each when you pick your detachment. That will unlock your 6 stratagems for that detachment, and then there are going to be some base rulebook stratagems, and they said double what there currently is, so that would put it to 8. So you're looking at a total of 14 that you have to go through instead of, I don't know how many AdMech had, but it seemed like 75 pages of strats.
But it's
and
not
now you're down to.
Well, it's just usable. I actually would like, I don't know, I want some uniqueness in armies. It feels like everybody's got, some sort of transhuman, +1 to wound, +1 to hit, ignore, like every single person has, every single fact, not even just army, period, has the same stratagem with a different fucking name on it. You know what I mean? And that's just, it's like certain armies used to have like, that's the army that could do this. You know what I mean? This is the army that could do this.
With the return of universal special rules, which I know Brad and I have talked about extensively, we love that idea. I'm sure Brandon, because he's been around for a while, also likes the idea of the universal special rules. It'll be neat to go, this army, the entire army has, bam, this USR. This universal special rule is, let's just say, feel no pain for the sakes of Death Guard, which I hope they get because it makes sense to me. They have feel no pain. You might not see feel no pain across another army wholeheartedly, hopefully. It would be like, that's their thing. I would love to see where the universal special rules, where it's like, hey, this army has this universal special rule, and only this army has it depth from stem to stern. Where I agree with what Brad said of there's transhuman all over the place. There's trans hitmen. There's so many reroll ones and so many full rerolls all over the place that there's no uniqueness to that. It would be neat to see Marines be like, hey, they're the reroll army. That's their thing. They're very tactical. They get a lot of rerolls. Tyranids would get, something like outnumbering the opponent bonuses and stuff like that. Other armies would get movement bonuses. It would just, toughness bonuses to where it's really every army feels unique. I really want that to return.
So there's a couple things in the chat and I just want to bring up. So Starlord was saying, I wish they would just get rid of the Primaris keyword. And what I understand is they're getting rid of the Primaris keyword. And if you look at the video teaser that they released, they're coming out with new Terminators. They're coming out with...
Which look like old Terminators, though. Those look like old space
they're old
Terminators.
But they're coming out the Terminator Librarian, Terminator Captain, Primaris Marines with combi weapons, which can substitute out for sergeants, can substitute out for Stern Guard. So I feel like they're getting rid of it, and they're just streamlining the Space Marine Codex. So you can use whatever you want. Just make sure they're on the right base.
Well, and in their preview, they said that you can put a Primaris Marine in Technical Dreadnought armor, which is Terminator armor. Mm-hmm. So therefore, it's pretty clear that the Primaris and Firstborn are kind of one and the same at this point.
Which I'm quite excited about, even though I think they'll get rid of Scout Bikes.
Your Scout Bikes.
You love them.
And it'd be neat if one of the, if,
Scout Bikes.
I don't know, let's say Raven Guard or somebody, their scouts were actually like useful and good, and intriguing.
I still just want uniqueness, man. I just want armies. I want the craft worlds, the high fleets, the chapters to be just different, not just because they have one bullet point of +1 to wound versus this. You know what I mean? Like, unlock certain units. I would like to see your HQs make a difference too. Like, Brandon used to run all bikes, and he ran a captain on a bike. The captain made the troops be bikes so that he ran a bike army. You know what I mean? So it changed how you built stuff.
Right, but with the way they've basically eliminated the force org chart, that would be, hey, guess what? You're playing a White Scar captain on a bike. He makes bikes battle lines, and then you can take 6 units of them.
Sure.
Right.
I guess
where now you're restricted to 3 units of bikes. right? Because they're not a battle line unit. And I'm looking at battle line units because they've gotten rid of designations for HQ troops, blah 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 blah. They've gotten rid of that. There is no such thing as an elite, a fast attack, a heavy, whatever. They are lines, but certain things have keyword battle line, which then you can add 6 to the army. They've said that it's very much in all their stuff. This is not spoiler in any way, shape, or form if you've read everything and followed it all. So it'd be neat if, I agree with you, if they did something like that, where it's like, if it's a White Scar captain on a bike, your things with bike keyword or whatever, become battle line. So then you can run Outriders as your troops, or, as your battle line or whatever.
So one thing I also heard that they're considering, so I do have friends who work with GW and are not playtesters, but they get early access materials. And they're thinking of this could be more of like a season format. So you know how we had our tournament campaign books every 6 months come out, do a refresh, and we would just change the rules. Well, they're thinking about doing that for like army construction as well. So like, let's say when they roll out the new indexes and the codexes, monstrous creatures are overpowered. Well, let's turn them back and then make infantry more powered. Like giving points decrease, giving them an extra special rule that helps out during the objectives, and just making it season based, which would add a lot of flexibility.
Well, also you can make it so that missions mean a big deal. So like, you can make the missions are the biggest things that count for anything if you're doing competitive, because that affects anything way more than points and everything else. Because if you say that, you have to have X amount of bodies on an objective, and this is the terrain type we're playing on, that makes a bigger difference than just points.
I think one of the big things will be is they've learned some stuff from AOS, right? Because AOS has focus. They had a focus with monsters one season. They're having a focus with characters right now. They've had a focus with unit champions before. That's something that they're porting over into 40K to probably refresh their seasons and keep them interesting, because they do change up builds by changing the focus on what you need in that season. I would assume at the beginning, things with objective control is, because that's one of the new stats, is the OC and a number. I assume objective control is going to be very important in the first season.
So doesn't Horus Heresy have it where if you pick this particular type of army build, it limits and allows you to take certain types of units? Maybe that's what they're going with.
Well, 40, they're basically playing seventh without 30K is literally 7th edition without all the shitty stuff that they added at the end to make it the worst edition ever. Yep. So that's a big deal with that.
So yeah, I mean, Horus Heresy has things where you can take certain Rights of War, I think is the name of it, and you could take like tanks as troops, or something else as troops. I assume that, as you've alluded to, Brad, of a character getting an enhancement to do something, because that's the term they're using now, as an enhancement.
Oh, they're taking something to get an enhancement, all right.
Yep.
Natural male enhancement.
There's going to be, you might be able to enhance your character to make, something that's not battle line.
But that gives uniqueness of it. Like, I mean, I love back in the day when Space Wolves had to take extra characters because they were they were basically roving bands of Space Wolves that came together. Excuse me, like I said, the bike captain, when you take Sam Hain, which everybody will yell at me because that's not actually how it's pronounced, but like in Eldar, you had completely different armies based on what you're taking. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I mean, again, as someone who, enjoys the game, enjoys the lore, I think the people who play not competitively will be very happy to get some stuff that will fluff their army out. And as a competitive player, we'd like things that give some uniqueness and feel. So when I look across the table and go, I don't care what color your Marines are, what chapter are you? Oh, that means you're probably doing this because that works, with that chapter the best. Where, as you've said, Brad, I look across and go, it's a Marine. How many Desolator Marines do you have? How many of this do you have? How many of that do you have? I don't care which chapter you are.
Yeah, I just would like to see. I mean, Blood Angels were the closest because of the fact that they had, Sanguinary Guard and Death Company. Like, a Blood Angels army at least looked like a Blood Angels army, and people were playing them because they're secondaries, but not just because of that, but it was a big deal on that. I love the fact that Blood Angels played like Blood Angels as opposed to this is a Marine army. What bonus did you tack on top of this?
Yeah.
I would say Dark Angels by Dark Angels.
I don't know, dude. Come on now. When's the last time you saw a Green Wing army of Dark Angels?
I didn't say Green Wing. I just said Raven Wing and Death Wing, which are superior in every way.
I do like Raven Wing. I think Raven Wing feels like Raven Wing. Death Wing has always kind of been a little bit odd. Also, Death Wing barely ever mustered, so it was kind of weird for them to be there in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But Raven Wing was all over the place. You know what I mean? And I like the idea of gotta go fast armies in the first place. I think they're very fun. I think slow moving, just sit armies are boring in the first place. That is just my opinion on that, though. You know what I mean?
I did like in the fluff, and I assume we're going to see that more often. That someone planted a teleport homers, and the Marines, the Terminator, showed up right there in their preview. I'm hoping from so far with all their previews that they've done that have been this cinematic for stuff, what they're putting in it seems to port over into the game. That'll be really neat to see if that does.
I'd like to see that. The thing is that every new edition we see Marines do super well, so I would assume that they are going to rock and roll. Mm-hmm. I can't agree with Corey. Usually your ideas are fucking stupid, but for a change, that is fantastic, Corey. Build secondaries back into the missions. Yes, I would love to see some goddamn difference in the mission. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and went to an event that was really well run that had 2.5 hour rounds with player place terrain and picking secondaries. I, in my head, went, all right, that's like 20 minutes right there. Now I got 2 hours and 10 minutes to play a game, so I have an hour and 5 minutes. I need to play something that just either kills something in 2 turns or loses in 2 turns. I don't really care which it is, because I'm not super, super competitive right now. And I went for all right, let's rock it in. Most of my games took under an hour and a half, and but under an hour of playtime, and that was fine. But it'd be nice to not have to fight 10 minutes of thinking of a secondary. Like, oh, I built my army around to do this. Well, I can't do that against that. Like my army, I had cranial feasting. My first round opponent was knights, so I went, oh look, cranial feasting's out the window. I have to pick another secondary. What works? What do I decide? And it was just, I'd be much happier if it's like, here's the mission. Do these 3 additional things, get points.
I would go, I actually agree with Fate on this. Is get rid of faction secondaries. They're too hard to make in the first place. You're never going to balance. The problem is that everybody gets a couple, 3 to 4 faction secondaries. You can't balance that over what do we have? Like 26 factions? You know what I mean? If you go individual books, I think that's right. And you can't tell me that you can figure out, 80, almost 80 freaking secondaries that a couple of them aren't OP and a couple of them aren't just trash fires. You know what I mean? It's same thing with the stratagems, man. Like, stop making a million of them and just narrow that down and go, here's the ones that are either good or at least thematic, you know what I mean, that have a reason to be in my army. I don't even mind the stupid ones where your army historically has an issue with some other factions each, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I'm okay with that one. Put whoever your nemesis is, you can reroll some shit on them. But like the fact that they have, every time I buy a box of cards, I take 90% of the cards and chuck them in the garbage, basically, and then take the 5 stratagems that I actually use and play with them. It's just stupid. Why are you doing that? You know what I mean? You can do the same thing with secondaries.
One of my biggest complaints about the game is someone who does all aspects of the hobby. Teaching people has always been one of my favorite things to try and do. But when you get a brand new player, it is so difficult to go, all right, and what army do you want to play? I want to play this. And it's like, okay, do you want to do it this way? Do you want to do it this way? Do you want to do it this way? With what they're talking about doing, and if I understand them correctly, it sounds like there's going to be faction packs that you can buy off the get-go if you don't want to do the digital downloads. where it'll have your data cards with their pertinent rules on them ready to go. At least it sounds like it. I'm not positive on that, but that's what it sounds like. For new players, that's great because that's the biggest thing has always been flipping back and forth in the book to go, I need this. But if you are a new player and you've got like 6 units and you have all 6 of your cards in front of you, it's not so hard to scour to find rules. That's something I like. Another thing that I like that they've very much done away with is I don't see leadership on that card anywhere, and that makes me very happy. They've never had a good leadership mechanic in all the years of playing this game. I'll be happy to see it go away.
I'm not averse to that. I would like to see that. There seems to be some point on that. It's just, remember when tournaments, I don't know, tournaments are unique too. I won't even go there because people don't like that. The tournaments being different no matter where you went. But I kind of, as long as you're using the same rules, I like the fact that missions were what made the game different when you went somewhere. You know what I mean? But the problem is that we had such a hard time getting unified rules in the first place, whether it be terrain and everything else. I hate going to tournaments and going, hey, are you using the WTC FAQ? Are you using this? Or, you know, what are we playing for terrain here? Can you see me?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to assume, and this is 100% an assumption on my part, no insider information of any kind. I assume they're going to go to GW Terrain for GTs. It's very, very logical.
Write it down.
Yeah. It makes sense to me. They've worked really hard at getting that system of theirs down, and they seem to be continually evaluating it. I think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to say that you should, I don't think they're going to say must, but I think they're going to put a should in there, use this design and layout for events. And we'll just see how TOs react to that. Personally, I'm all for it because anything to make my job easier, I like. But we'll see. I mean, it's an expensive endeavor, as we've covered before, but it'd be something nice to see them do, to where go, here's a universal rule set that we have found works really well. You should use it. Not must, but should.
If you
I don't know. I like seeing all the unique tables that like the boys would have. I don't want to see those traded out for, plastic terrain.
You can still do unique tables with their formatting. It's just, here's the sizes. These are the keywords they should have. You can still do very thematic, very interesting looking tables in that and still have the same tables, but just thematically done. At least that's my opinion.
So how is that any different than the GW trade pack that they have now? Like the tournament pack?
Well, the tournament pack they have now doesn't have any terrain layouts in it. Their terrain layouts are only for their opens that they're doing.
They put them out themselves, to be honest.
Yeah.
The better part is, I do love the fact that they do this because it's such a douche move. They make sure that all of the tables, like the rows, are slightly different on how they do it. So that's why they don't have a specific measurement of where they go, which I still think is crazy, but it's so funny.
Because I asked one time, and I've asked, as I know people that have judged at the events, how do you guys set up your tables? And they were like, oh, well, we use these 2 bases for the terrain to do all the measurements for all the setup. So when we initially put it all down, it's roughly in the same area. But they're like, as you know, stuff gets jostled and moved and shifted, but it's roughly in the same vein of this is what we do. And some smart person got there the first morning and measured everything out and said, oh, this is what they're doing for measurements for everything. But they're within reason distance on that. They're not like 100% verbatim exact.
Terrain's a big deal on that, man. I don't care what the edition is. Like, for instance, I had a great time at Adepticon, and I talked to the guys, but like, their terrain was so unbelievably not good there this year that it made a lot of the games just feel very first turny and just like non-interactive. You have to have terrain. Well, I'll go into that. As a TO, what are you going to do about getting terrain ready for the new edition once you see? Because the terrain will interact probably different. I mean, they rumored that they were going abstract.
I'm of the belief that GW doesn't want to negate what they're selling, right? They don't want to negate their terrain that they already have painted and ready to go for their events, so their terrain is viable. I am sticking to my guns and going, I'm going to use GW terrain. I'm going to make sure things fit into their footprints, their sizes, and everything else. And I can modify a lot of my old stuff to fit into that, thankfully. But it's an endeavor. Every edition, every time has been, I have to adjust terrain. One of my favorite tables that Chris Courtney has ever made is the train table. If you've ever played at Du Bois, back when we used to use that table, it was iconic. Had a big imperial terrain on it, forests, some blow up, some craters. It was a really nice, very thematic table. It hasn't worked in the last 2 editions of 40K at all. Like 0% of play. So we knew that that table had to be retired for a while, and what could we do to update it to bring it back around? The train still worked as a piece of line of sight blocking terrain. If you blow it up and make it the 2 smaller buildings, how do you do everything else to make it to fit? And it was just tough because it's a lot of work. Well, instead, let's replace that with a table of boom. Here it is. Table replaces and takes care of it. It's difficult as a TO to continually modify terrain because I have boxes, and I mean boxes of terrain that is just not feasible right now. Every forest with trees and everything else that I have, which were great from 3rd edition through 6th, they kind of sit in a box now. I've got, I'm going to go with 100 bases, if not more, of, trees that were forests that were really good, that had a play, that had some rules, that were capable. Now we're just talking light cover and dense cover. They don't block any line of sight. If you played against a shooting army, you just get blown off the board anyways because of +1s to hits and everything else. Well, they weren't great, so we retired those for a while. We may have had some tables with some on them, but it wasn't what it once was, where there was 2 on every table. It's tough. You have to just constantly adjust on the fly. It's just part of being a TO.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that as a player, that's one of the biggest things, though, is you can make or break my tournament experience by having unplayable terrain. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Really.
There's times like it. Let's say that for Salt City, I have 40 tables of 100% matching terrain. They all look a little different, but they're the same terrain. They're the WTC style made out of that hard foam board that they printed for me. They're GW layouts. Let's say the new edition comes out and craters are now much more important. Well, I don't have any craters for that, but in a case I have craters from years ago, I'd be able to make those viable and do that change. A new TO would have to go, oh, I need to make craters. How do I make craters? And would immediately hit a YouTube tutorial finding the cheapest way to probably make craters. You might get to that first tournament that's 3 weeks after the edition drops, where craters are the key, right? The key piece of terrain. You need 2 to 4 of them on every table. They may have them and they may not be painted. And you're just going to have to go, yep, at least they made the effort to get that.
What do you think about being better as a community and either renting or borrowing or making your community share terrain and stuff like that? Not, I guess, making them, but giving that opportunity for people. Because I bet you a lot of other tournaments would just pay a fee if they could come get terrain.
I've told a lot of other TOs and anyone who's in the New England, upstate New York, Northeast area, I have a lot of tables. They don't get used every day. There are typically 1 to 2 weekends a month my tables get used. That leaves them open for availability if you can come get them and return them before my next event. I have always offered, or if you need me to drive 4 to 6 tables to you or whatever, let me know. I'll come out. Give me a ticket to your event, right? If it's just your standard store GT or inexpensive GT. If it's a big premier event, different story. But give me a ticket. I'll come out. I'll hang out with you, play some games. You can borrow some terrain. That's a very low rent thing. I think a lot of TOs now do that amongst their areas. The problem is the major events don't, and I'm not sure why. I don't know why that happens. I can't begin to understand it.
We just want to have more tournaments, more people in the hobby, but it's hard, especially as a beginning, somebody that's not an established TO for a long time, or you don't have a huge following on that, volunteers and people to help you get new terrain. That just helps a huge amount. I mean, Zoo's just like, you loan out terrain and it comes back as powder.
That has happened.
You're like, we took six tables from you. You have a bag. What's like? Here's your bag of terrain back.
Yeah. So here's like in Rochester, where I run Du Bois. Du Bois crowd themselves that were the original crowd have kind of dispersed, got older kids and all that. There's now a new group of younger guys who have kind of put together their own little club of things. And they were like, hey, Brian, we want to do a GT out here because none of their stores there locally are giving them the support that they're looking for to run events. They're getting like, hey, yeah, you can have an event here. You can have 4 tables. And then that's just not enough. They've got like 40 guys in their crew. And they were like, man, Brian, you have terrain. Would you mind like coming out and helping us judge and put together something? Like, yeah, how many tables do you need? And they were like, oh, well, we want to have 30 people. So could you bring 15 tables of terrain? Absolutely. I'll be there with 15 tables with bells on. And on the 22nd of this month, they sold out their event pretty much amongst all their club members. And I'm going to go out there and help them run a 40K tournament. But they asked if I could help them out by bringing out some paints and some stuff, because I've done paint demos and all that stuff. Hey, can you bring some of that stuff too? Absolutely, because I'm all about promoting the hobby. Is it an entire day out of me? Absolutely. I'll leave my house at 6:30 in the morning. I'll get home at 11 o'clock at night, completely exhausted. But that helps that community grow and get better. They're going to come to my events. They're going to come to
it's an investment,
Binghamton's events.
100%.
It's 100% paying it forward. So Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, Albany, Binghamton, Watertown is kind of the upstate New York area. If any TO in that area reaches out to me and goes, hey, we need tables for this event we're running, I will look at my calendar and go, I can help, or I can't help that weekend. Is there another weekend out of these 3 that would work for you? Because, I run at the store I'm at, I run 40K one weekend, I run AOS one weekend. Then there's 2 weekends where my terrain's not used at all. They could go anywhere in the state. I mean, I'm more than happy to loan it out as long as it comes back. And, it's one of those, please bring it back in the condition that it went out in. And
I think ultimately all this boils down to is just getting involved in your community and communicating these.
Yep.
Because people need to know it's an option, right?
Yep.
And I think people are maybe a little scared, or they don't know, they don't have those resources. So just making sure that we're available, we have our information out there, and people can get hold of us.
As people who are older gentlemen in the community, right? All 3 of us are not, spring chickens anymore. Our hope is to keep pushing the hobby forward for multitudes of reasons. For myself, I enjoy bringing in the next group to help promote things and get the hobby going. So I always have someone to play when I get old and feeble. Brad wants to keep doing the same thing to get his, coaching stuff going for the competitive side of things. And by him training the players of tomorrow, it gives him more competition to play against. So he's more challenged. I know Brandon's a big, hobby guy. I'm sure you're happy to, anytime somebody wants to talk with you about hobby side of things or how you did this crude conversion or something like that, you pay it forward. And I think that's one of the things that this community is great with, is that happens a lot. And I think if all the TOs banded together to go, all right, yeah, we realized that Adepticon had bad terrain this year, and that was people's big comments. And every TO that's in the go to Adepticon mode just said, hey guys, we'll bring 4 tables.
Which is crazy. So many people drive there too. That's what I was nuts about. I was like, man, they have so many people that are involved in that tournament. I swear to God, if you just literally went, hey man, on Wednesday, we're going to build and paint like 20 tables. I bet you could easily kick that out. We were just there. That would just be fun to sit down. I mean, I would destroy things, but you guys would make things happen. But we could just have drinks and just it put some things together. It doesn't even take that long.
it's tough to get a lot of the community will say they'll band and come and do stuff, and then you'll get 3 or 4 guys that really do come and put an immense amount of work and effort. And I will always be thankful to Jeff, Zuber, everyone that's helped me over the years put tables together, get tables to an event. Jason Hager, who has not played any 9th edition, but has driven terrain to Du Bois every year to help us out to get stuff there. And the community, if you build your community correctly, they will help you. And, one guy might be able to only help you for a half hour on a Tuesday once every month. Just be happy to have that half hour from that guy to help you out. Don't be mad like, oh, you can't stay longer. It's like, no, he put 2 coats of paint on one building. Great. That's fantastic. It got me one step closer to being done with it. But I think like things like Adepticon, I'll use for the example of this one. Death or Glory is right there in your backyard, right? They have tables. I'm sure there's somebody just to the south of them that has a bunch of tables. There's somebody to the east that has tables. Just ask. Say, hey, guys, we need to update some tables. Is there a chance you can bring stuff that matches this layout of what we want? Can you do this? And then if they can get commitment from people to actually show and do that and, like, have the tables get there, like, a couple days beforehand to make sure that everything's kosher, it would definitely improve, things. And
Things.
I think
apparently I'm supposed to make you say Tyler's name.
Yeah, Tyler Brown. Oh my God, Tyler Brown, who spent one day here in my attic when it was like 90 degrees out and it was probably 110 in my attic, painting red onto 1 table's worth of terrain that took forever because we were trying to do the trims, so we sprayed it bronze and then going in and putting like the inlays of red in. He did that for hours. Oh my God, it did. Yeah, there's so many community members like Jeremy Macera helped me TO stuff, helped paint stuff, helped cut MDF. He's in Antarctica now. And it was just, the community is so fantastic. I can't say enough about my community locally because there's so many people, I couldn't even name them all, who've helped me out over the years.
So, Brad, I believe it's just about 8 o'clock. So you have any closing thoughts?
I have to refute Eloise telling people that they should go into the middle and roll 6s. No,
that's expert level advice, right?
That is where you go to die. Exactly. Never hold the middle. Oh, I can't believe my army died. It's because you sat in the death box. I think that we'll circle all the way back to the original title of it. That if you diversify your collection, you're going to be better off, to be honest. Also, look for those deals, everyone. Around now, like a ton of people, for whatever reason, decide that, it's a new edition. I don't care about these models. And people sell off a lot. Like, not just like a quantity, but like lots of, of full armies and shit like that. You can pick up some shit on the cheap. Very, very, very cheap.
Yep. Never fail to check out those secondhand stores finds. You never know what you're going to find in those bins.
I think Kramer's picked up about 15,000 points of Space Marines just because of edition changes. And people selling, $5,000 worth of models for $200 because they're just done.
All of the things, some of the time.
Yep.
Anybody want to promote anything?
Yeah, I'll take an opportunity to promote. So this is definitely an opportunity for everyone to go paint their favorite model. I don't know what your favorite model is, but figure it out, build it, paint it, and get it ready for 10th edition. In addition, Eloise and I are low-key starting some social media stuff, so I'll have more to announce on that. I'm going to be working with Brad to help me out, get some stuff rolling, so I'll start some streaming maybe developing some more videos and content, and maybe even selling some terrain and display boards. Who knows? We'll see what happens.
You got that together so fast, by the way. That was impressive.
I may already have artwork coming in and a business license.
Nice. Look at that. Low key.
All because of Eloise. She's got this. She knows how to keep me in line.
Tasers and ball gags. Got it.
Yes.
Gordon, what do you got for me before we go?
So, Salt City GT, July 7th, 8th, and 9th. Please sign up before the 15th for 40K in Age of Sigmar and save on your ticket prices. because the ticket prices will jump up a few bucks then. Also, we just rolled out Marvel Crisis Protocol and Kill Team as 2 new events to the thing, with a couple great TOs taking over that. The people from Professional Casual are doing it for Marvel Crisis Protocol, who just did all the streams from Adepticon. We got a group coming in to do Kill Team as well, who are really well respected, so it's going to be a good time.
We've got the Mayhem GT in North Carolina, April 22nd, 23rd. We got like 10 tickets, 10 to 15 tickets left. Very nice. Everyone, it was good to see you. As usual, put some random stuff in. Like and subscribe. Make it so I can continue to live and pay for my large parts of medication. Until then, take it easy, everyone.